Hello, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Tell us more about the Lost Shtetl.
Absolutely. This is a book I've been working on for many, many years. I am married now 8 years, and I met my wife about 1.5 years before my wedding, and I had written the first 2 chapters when I met her. So I had been working on it for a very, very long time. Essentially, the story is about a little Jewish village in Poland that is overlooked by World War II. It passes them by. And, there were hundreds of villages in Poland. So it's a bit of a fantastic story, but there were so many that when I came up with the idea, I was like, it seems like it's something that could have happened. So they're overlooked by the Germans in World War II. They're overlooked by the Soviets in the Cold War, and they're rediscovered in the here and now. And it's a little bit of a time travel story. What happens when you suddenly wake up in 2020 and see a completely different world with all sorts of technology, with all sorts of political changes, with all sorts of economic changes, and that was basically the story.
And what was your inspiration for the characters like Yankel? It's so interesting.
It's been asked to me before, are you in your book? And I would say that I'm probably there's a little bit of me in Yankel. I think with a lot of writers, characters take on a lot of composite people in their life. So Yankel there's definitely a little bit of me in him, a little bit of other people. The main female character, Pesha, there's definitely a little bit of my wife in it, although although that came later, because as you know, as I just confessed before you all, I had been working on it before I even met my wife. But there was a woman I dated about a decade ago who was a former Hasidic Jew. She was in the Hasidic Jewish community and left. And she started telling me her story about leaving that world, a very cloistered world, a very familiar world, and just sort of stepping out of it. And that was very much an inspiration for this character. I mean, she was obviously very different from this woman that I knew, but that was a part of the inspiration for how this got going.
And what about the style in writing? Because sometimes it seems as at the same time being contemporary, and other times it's been said to be like a bit folkloric.
Well, that was definitely intentional. I definitely wanted to feel like a folktale. Definitely wanted to feel. Some of my all-time favorite writing has always been fairy tales, folk tales. I think that a lot of the great novels are in that style, even if they're set in contemporary times. But I did want it to have the feeling of, an old hand in the village telling this story. So it was a Yiddish folk tale, but about something completely modern. And that was, it was intentional, it was fun. It's fun to, sort of assume that kind of voice and think about a contemporary story in that voice,
Yes, and it allows you at the same time to, seems like there are many books in that book.
I'm holding it up, my version of it too. I don't know if
okay, it's quite the same, yes. Yeah. It's hard to see.
It's hard to see.
But yes, you talk about, of course, the Holocaust, but you talk about human relationships, you talk about the influence of the media, you talk about so many different things, and that's quite interesting because we kind of travel with the book in
Hmm.
time.
Well, I mean, one of the mythologies is that these cloistered communities, these religious communities, don't have the same desires, the same wants, and the same problems as the rest of us. That that the piety shields them from so many of these things that are real, true, important, all those things. And I think that that was very much something I wanted to explore with this. One of the writers who's always been a very big influence for me was Isaac Bashevis Singer. Um, and I don't know, how much, everybody knows about Isaac Bashevis Singer. He was the only Yiddish language writer to win the Nobel Prize for Literature. Um, and he came from Poland, and he, came to America at some point, but he had seen this small town world, and he had seen the modern urban world as well. And amongst Yiddish writers, he was reviled. And part of it was because of his success. He was a very successful writer. He got translated, which was a very um, coveted thing amongst Yiddish writers in America. But he also was not afraid to explore carnality. I mean, he was a very carnal writer, and he was very desire was very much a part of his writing, and it's something that I wanted to get into as well with this. So I've always believed that he had it most right about some of these little towns. That there's Tevye the dairyman, which is which is also a great inspiration, and I loved. But I think that there is with a lot of people in a shtetl, and look, there are modern shtetls right now. There are neighborhoods in Brooklyn that are very cloistered and self-sufficient. Then there are towns in Florida, and it's not all Jewish. It's not Jewish towns I'm talking about either. That are, these planned communities where everybody goes to the same church, and they listen to the same pastor, and they have share a lot of the same customs and beliefs. And yet within that, I've always believed that there is dissent, there are differing points of view, and there is these problems that are not just like quaintly by the wayside, that they actually really do exist. Does that make sense?
Oh, sure does. It's very interesting. And now, tell me, what would be the subject for your next book? Are you working on a next book?
Oh, I am. I'm actually working on a couple of things at the moment. I have a couple of ideas. One of which is a story collection, which they never sell. But I'm trying to. I've been writing short stories. So the period between finishing this book, getting the agent on the book, getting the agent to sell the book, and the book being bought, edited, and actually in stores now, it was a very, very long process. And so I always thought that the best thing to do was to actually tinker away and scribble away at some short stories. So I have uh, about enough for a collection right now. I'm working on one final one at the moment. And then I have a couple of ideas, that one of which is not written, but I have like a proposal on, which is completely not Jewish in any way. It's sort of almost a fantasy book, even though I'm not really that acquainted with fantasy. I don't read a lot of fantasy, but this is sort of in the spirit of I want to say almost like an Animal Farm or George Orwell kind of thing. And then I have a couple of other ideas, which are still a little half baked, even though I've already started writing them as well.
Well, it's been very nice speaking with you, and thank you for sharing with us.
Hey, my
Been
pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Matt.